So, in amongst a number of articles and comments, a Facebook buddy of mine, Jim, had sent me was this one from Macmillan Cancer Support. Brave the shave for people living with cancer. Now, straight off the bat, and the only reason I'm not quoting Jim, he had made a couple of comments on it, and I absolutely agree with him, is because he never said, hey, you can share my thoughts on that. And, but I did say to Jim that I would do a quick vid on this, and people could say, oh, well, this is deserving more than a quick vid, Scott. But given the fact that so many vids out there are actually popular because of their quite short, just my quick thoughts on this. Don't you find it interesting that the very treatment reduces your weight, that the likelihood of your hair falling out very quickly in the process is so much of a thing? And they say to you, well, look, it's just part of the process. To get at the cancers, we have to give you things that, well, they don't react well with the human body, not in a positive way. As opposed to saying to people, well, do you know what? Your health is your responsibility. So, if you want to go out and have beers, fine and dandy. If you want to do X, Y, and Z, fine and dandy. But also, look to good nutrition, what you're consuming, what you're eating. Give it some thought, because, and let's be honest here, over the last few decades, it's gone from 1 in 8 to 1 in 6 to 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 to now 1 in 2. And we know it's not down to smoking, because less people smoke now than ever, to be honest. I still smoke myself. I don't recommend it as such, but it's not the core causes. And they can never really tell you what the core causes are. Oh, they'll mention tobacco, they'll say smoking. They'll also maybe mention drinking, but I would argue it's what you're drinking. You could also argue what you're smoking. You could also argue what you're consuming. You could also argue what you're exposing yourself to that you are blissfully unaware of, that is to your detriment. And let me repeat, for those of the young team especially, I can assure you. Yeah, thanks for that, Bella. God, last word, enemy. She's still at it. God bless her. As an old school Gen Xer, I remember cancer being far less of a thing. It was always a thing, yeah. But then also I remember that diabetes used to be, well, not so much of a thing. It was always a thing, apparently, but I promise you, in the early 80s, I maybe knew 1 or 2 people with diabetes, and people could counter that with, well, a lot of people, especially back then, wanted to keep it private. No, but I can assure you, well, somebody gave them a confidence course then, because by the late 80s, it was a completely different scenario, and into the 90s, well, who didn't you know that didn't have diabetes? Yeah? So this goes from a really quick short vid to, well, Scott, you long-winded anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's yet another complex subject. Yeah, I totally give you that. But the responsibility for your health should be told to you from childhood that it is yours. That there are things out there that will vastly benefit you, and there are things out there that won't. And this blanket assumption that whatever you go and buy is to your betterment is something you should reflect on. Pretty much all what goes for confectionery, I would not touch. Pretty much all that goes for fast food, I would not touch. Yeah. It may even taste nice and all the rest of it, and for some unknown reason, you might actually think you've got a perceived value. But at the expense of a vastly diminished life. Not just how long you live, but the quality of life you live. in a world now where the people that run things despise you. Yeah? And to add insult to injury, they own the food industry, they own the medical industry, they own everything to do with pharmaceuticals, and anything that's actually vastly beneficial from you, they will demonize and give you other distractions. But they will certainly, as an almost ritualistic laugh, will have you engaging in a thing of which you go down the line of, with hope, and you go girl, or you go guy, and what an inspiration. But I can assure you, you will have a vastly shortened life. And it doesn't have to be this way. It truly doesn't. Seriously. I have been astounded by many people who have some wealth, and they'll spend money on a great car or a couple of great cars. They'll do the holidays or whatever else, but they drink and eat shite. I can believe it. There's many clued up occultists out there that, well, they know better. And that's why they will go to certain restaurants and certain restaurants only. They have a great kitchen because they know the value of food and where it comes from, etc., etc. You could talk about this for hours. But for the vast majority of the population, the focus is on, well, places like, what's it called, Iceland, and they've got the cheek to say on the window, quality food. It's just processed shite. But people have a perceived value and a loyalty because they feel, even to this day, sort of working class roots and making ends meet, as opposed to realizing that what they're consuming is to their detriment, not to them, but their offspring. And I could still talk about this from so many angles, but the inference, the exception, the acception of, well, cancer, right, you're going to lose your hair, you're going to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. We're going to irradiate you. In fact, we'll leave the room while we're doing so. Because this is just so good for you. Yeah. The witchcraft of that, seriously. Because anybody cynical at all would question, given the fact of the stats, that the more money that is spent supposedly on curing cancer, the more people seem to have it. And I'll speak to you soon.